What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Daniel Jones addressed the press, the media, the people that cover the team, and essentially said his goodbyes, which some would say, well, why is he doing this now? Well, obviously everyone knows by now, if you follow football, Daniel Jones has been benched, but he hasn't just been benched. He's been made the third string quarterback, basically acknowledging he's never going to play another snap for the Giants ever again. This move was made for financial reasons. They don't want him to get injured and owe him $23 million. So they don't make him the backup because you're just one snap away. You make him the third string. That the game plan would be for him never to play again for the New York Giants. And I think it's, unless there's a complete disaster, multiple people got hurt, and he's got to go in as a emergency quarterback, he's never, ever going to take a snap again for the New York Giants. But I think when you listen to Daniel Jones speak about his situation, it reminds me of something I learned a long time ago when it came to scouting and why it's so much different than most of our businesses. Well, let's take a listen to Daniel Jones kind of go on a, over a minute rant about his goodbyes and him acknowledging that he's to blame or played a big part in the failures that was this season, and how his career is basically coming to an end as a New York Giant.
The opportunity to play for the New York Giants was truly a dream come true, and I'm extremely grateful to the Mara and Tisch families for the chance to play here. The Giants are truly a first-class organization, and I have nothing but genuine respect and appreciation for the people who have built it and who helped carry on that tradition. I've met so many special people and created relationships that will truly last a lifetime. Thank you to all my teammates, coaches, and staff that have done so much for me these past 6 years. There have been some great times, but of course, we all wish there had been more of those. I take full responsibility for my part in not bringing more wins. No one wanted to win more games worse than me, and I gave everything I had on the field and in my preparation. Of course, this season has been disappointing for all, and of course, I wish I could have done more. I'm 100% accountable for my part. I did not play well enough consistently enough to help the team get the results. The reality of the NFL is it's hard to win games and requires consistent performance from everyone involved. We didn't do that well enough, so the idea to change something happens, and I understand. I love the game. I love being part of a team. I'm excited for the next opportunity and know that there's a lot of good football in front of me, and I'm excited about that. To all the fans, I have deep respect and appreciation for your passion and love for the Giants. The fans are a huge part of what makes playing for the Giants so special.
One thing I was taught early on when I was scouting college players is to always evaluate the player before you got the character information. Because if you got the character information first, and it was a guy that just was really impressive, stood for everything that you would want in a player that you'd want to pound the table for because of his work ethic, because of his love of football, because maybe what he's overcome in his personal life, in his family life, his background and where he started and where he's at now. Maybe it's just the leadership that he possesses in that program, whatever it may be, can cloud your judgment once you get that information and then once you turn on the tape. And it can also work in the reverse. If you get the character information before you watch the player and it's really bad, and I mean just stuff that might be non-negotiables for you or your organization, and then you watch the player and he's pretty good, it can also cloud your judgment the wrong way. So ideally, you watch the player without any information about the guy, and you just evaluate the player. Then you get all the off-the-field information, and you separate that in your report, which you would anyway. But your evaluation on the field, which obviously is the most important thing in the business of football, is separate. And it's just strictly, can the guy play? Can he not? Does he fit your team or does he not? Nothing involved with how he is as a guy. And I think Daniel Jones is a perfect example of when you let the character cloud your judgment on the player. Because when we listen to Daniel Jones talk, I mean, this has got to be one of the most embarrassing moments of his professional life. He's a third stringer while he's making $40 million a year. The best player on the team, Dexter Lawrence, has been outspoken how he doesn't agree with the decision. I saw Brian Daboll had to come out today and say, like, I respect Dexter Lawrence. Obviously, we love him here, but sometimes we're going to disagree. And clearly, this decision was made for financial reasons, but also acknowledging Daniel Jones stinks. He can't be our starting quarterback anymore, and we can't risk him getting hurt while we are losing. So we got to pay him $23 million next year. But when you listen to Daniel Jones talk, you got pretty impressive individual. You know why? Because he is. He's really outside of the game of football, everything you would want from a work ethic standpoint, clearly from an in the locker room leadership, get along with the teammates, and be a good guy standpoint. You never, when you lay your head down at night as a GM, as a coach, as an owner, he is probably the last guy on your 53-man roster that you are worried about getting a call in the middle of the night. He got in trouble. And that matters. It really does, especially at the quarterback position. He looks the part. He's clearly an intelligent guy coming from Duke. Honestly, if you drew up a quarterback, not on the field, but just in terms of height, athleticism, intangibles, intelligence, like he would check a lot of boxes. The problem is he's not very good at football. And in most of our industries, I'm a good example of this. When people took chances on me, whether it be in college football, whether it was in the NFL, early on in my career, talking for a living, it was because they just kind of bet on the guy. It was hard for me to prove, quote unquote, was I talented enough? Could I get the job done? But like a lot of people listening, someone just went, this kid's hungry. This guy wants it. I'm taking a chance. Right? That's why most of us, whether you run a company, whether you run a business, whether you're in charge of hiring, why a lot of people take chances on people. You're just kind of betting on the person. Obviously, there are some industries where you have to have, a level of a resume in that field, whether it's a doctor, a medical degree, a lawyer, a law degree. But for a lot of us in the private sector, it's like, I just believe in this guy and we will help teach him and figure out how to produce in said industry. That is not the case in football, especially at the quarterback position. Obviously, betting on the person matters. Most of the top quarterbacks, really all the top quarterbacks, are clearly really good guys in the NFL right now and check all the boxes off the field. Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Herbert, Burrow, right? The old guy who can still play, Stafford. Even some of the guys that have turned their careers around. Clearly, Kyler Murray has matured a lot. Like, that's not really debatable at this time. A couple years ago, a lot of question marks, has really grown up. But let's use him as an example. Even early on in his career, if the worst thing you have is you're playing too much video games, like there could be worse problems to have. But why did they ultimately listen, we need you to play less video games, but here's your contract? Because he was a freak talent. He's faster than every guy when he steps on the field. He has a massive arm. Despite being 5'9", he can play at an elite level in the NFL. No one has ever disputed his physical characteristics or his ability to play football at a high level, going back to college when he transferred to Oklahoma and dominated. So in the NFL, character matters. And when you have the talent, all that intangible stuff can help separate you. I've seen it like with the 49ers, for example. George Kittle, 5th-round pick, but he's 6'4", 6'3". He's one of the faster tight ends in the NFL. He's one of the stronger tight ends in the NFL. He loves football. His work ethic's great. It's not shocking looking back why he became a great player. But his physical characteristics, on top of the intangibles, helped him separate. Daniel Jones checks every box off the field. But on the field, He lacks a lot of them. He can't throw the ball down the field. His decision making is more than questionable. Honestly, for being a really smart guy, I think he plays kind of dumb. And in scouting, you have to be very careful about betting on the guy when they're not a good enough player. Just like you have to be very careful against betting on, I can't even speak, betting against the guy when they're an elite player. Why? Because young people mature, because people turn around their life. Because sometimes at 22, 23, 24, you do dumb shit and you're not a bad guy. Some people are bad guys. Like, we don't live in some utopian society. No matter how much some people in the media believe that that's what ultimately this world can be. That's not going to be the case. It never will be. Some people are just awful people for whatever reason. I don't know why. We all have different stories, but the longer you live, the more you realize, like, yeah, some people are just not good people. But some people do something dumb when they're young, and then immediately, like, you look back 10 years later in their NFL career and they're off half the draft boards, and they're like, God, that's a really impressive guy. It's like, well, yeah, turned his life around. I think the best example is like Tyrann Mathieu was kicked out of college at LSU. He clearly, had some issues with authority. And I'm not even like ultimately smoking synthetic weed. Who gives a shit? Now, at the time, it was a much bigger deal. But you don't just get kicked off the team. Like, there was some stuff going on. And then he became the team captain for literally every team he's ever played for. And is going to go down as like one of the great leaders for every guy that he ever played with. I'm just using him as an example because if you got his character going into LSU and you gave it to your GM and your head coach, I bet a lot of people did not have him on the draft board. Where yet in the draft meeting, when you're talking about guys like Daniel Jones, it's so easy to be like, this is the type guy we want. This is the type person you want to have in your building. Yet in the second half on a Sunday night football game, when you're playing a top 5 defense and he's getting his ass kicked because he's completely overwhelmed, that stuff doesn't matter. And that to me is the difference at the highest level of a business like football than a lot of ours, where you can take a young guy and mold him over time. Doesn't work that way in football. Because if you're just simply not good enough, you can't overcome that, especially at the quarterback position. And we go back to when the Giants drafted him at number 6. It was insane. Because a guy with his talent level should never be drafted in the first round. I've been saying this forever about like the Mac Jones version of player. Those guys aren't first round talents. They should go in the 3rd and the 4th round. Daniel Jones in the perfect world is like good backup. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Did a golf shoot yesterday with my guy Luis, who's a good example. Like, I didn't know that much about him. Someone told me about him. He's young. He's like 23, 24 years old. He's in the video business. Took a shot on him. He's good. I'm betting on the guy. Obviously, he has to have skills and the editing skills, and he's got a lot of them. But you just kind of betting on the person. And going back to these quarterbacks that get overdrafted, it's like they don't have the physical skills. No matter how good of people they are, they're just not good enough. And I think sometimes we get overwhelmed, owners and GMs by people, and it gets them in these situations why they constantly lose. And I'm not acting like you just need to get a team full of idiots and slappies that are great players. Obviously, character matters. Chiefs have won 3 Super Bowls in 5 years. Their team is full of high-level guys. As a buddy told me within the last couple of months that works for the Chiefs, he's like, Karlofskis and McDuffie are like, it just doesn't get any better football character. So obviously they have drafted really well, and Chris Jones, Mahomes, and Kelsey's careers speak for themselves. The Patriots for 20 years, for the most part, had, I would call, overachievers. I mean, obviously they had a lot of talent, but a lot of their starters, I think, would fall under the bucket of overachievers. Julian Edelman's a good example, but he was still damn good at football. And the Giants found themselves in this situation because they doubled down on a player who simply wasn't good enough because he was a great human being.